Why is Control the title?
I don't know. It's a concept. It's like a life concept. I have a thing about I need to be in control. I've never had control. I've loved to pretend I'm in control. Control is a concept. It's just I've just lacked control in my whole life, and I think I've craved it my whole life, and I couldn't really arrive at it. And now I'm not really looking to arrive at it anymore. I'm just happy to be present.
SZA's debut album, Control, turns 8 years old this year, and ever since my first listen, I have been unable to forget its impact on me. While SZA may be a household name in 2025, she was not 8 years ago. When her debut album, Control, dropped in 2017, it had a cultural impact that very few albums can claim to have. At the time, I was coming out of my first real heartbreak. I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me for who I was. When it all fell apart, it hit a lot harder than I had expected. All the old insecurities I thought I'd outgrown came rushing back. I felt untethered, like I was unraveling in slow motion. So I did what a lot of us do when we're lost. I reached out. I started calling the people who knew me best, hoping someone would help me find a way back to myself. One of those people was my high school friend Najee. When I told her what I was going through, she didn't skip a beat. She just said, "You need to listen to SZA." I didn't realize it at the time, but that one suggestion would end up changing everything for me. In just a few short years, SZA has transformed from a music cult favorite into a defining voice of modern R&B. The TikTok virality of her songs Kill Bill and Snooze only amplified what longtime fans already knew. She's a once-in-a-generation talent. Sold-out tours, multiple #1 hits, and a growing collection of Grammys have solidified her place at the top of the mainstream pop cultural zeitgeist. But for all of the success she's found in recent years, I still think the most important thing SZA ever gave the world was control. SZA's Control redefined how personal music could be, with the album feeling like a private conversation or a compilation of messy diary entries. Control gave a voice to the millennial emotionality, capturing the fragmented uncertainty of being in your 20s during the 2010s and beyond. SZA was confused, jealous, heartbroken, obsessive, and unfiltered. Total emotional chaos without apology, mirroring the way real people experience emotions all at once that are never neatly resolved. And the more I listened to Control, the more I realized I wasn't the only one who felt this way. I didn't feel so alone in my sadness or my contradictions. Control wasn't just my soundtrack, it was a generational one, a blueprint for how to be vulnerable, flawed, and still powerful. While SZA is undoubtedly on track to have a long and impactful career, I want to take a step back and focus on Control, an album that I believe marks a turning point in pop culture history, even if it doesn't always get the credit it deserves. Whether intentional or not, Control positioned SZA at the forefront of a cultural shift, one that embraced emotional ambivalence, vulnerability, and the kind of unfiltered honesty that's now become a staple of modern music. In many ways, Control helped usher in what we now think of as the sad girl era for many artists today like Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo, or more recently, Lola Young. But the album Control did all of this with a nuance and rawness that felt radically different from anything else at the time. Released in the age of Instagram perfection, when womanhood was often flattened into polished aesthetics and bite-sized empowerment quotes, Control was messy, unsure, insecure, and because of all of that, it was real. Quick disclaimer before things get serious, I'm going to do my best to balance my deep, occasionally irrational SZA standum with the facts surrounding her life and musical career. That said, let it be known, this is a SZA safe space. Any hate or disrespect towards SZA will not be tolerated in any form, and if you do choose to drop something unhinged in the comments, just know that my replies will look a little something like this.
Let me tell you something right now. At the end of the day, I will fuck you up, and I'm trying to be the bigger person.
And if you don't get it, it's because you're a loser, and get the motherfuck off my channel.
Shut your fucking mouth. Hi, Amber. Shut your fucking mouth. Do you understand me?
You don't want to hear this. You may exit out of the channel, you little shit, okay? I don't want you here.
That's my opinion!
I said what I said.
In this video, I explore how SZA navigated her identity, insecurities, and artistry to create Control. I'll trace her path from self-produced SoundCloud beginnings to redefining vulnerability in R&B, and examine why Control still resonates as a cultural reset, an album that challenged perfection, embraced messiness, and reimagined what womanhood and self-worth could sound like in the 21st century. Solana Imani Rowe was born on November 8, 1989 in St. Louis, Missouri. Raised in Maplewood, New Jersey, about 40 minutes from New York City, Solana's father, Abdul Alim Mubarak Rowe, was an executive producer for CNN, and her mother, Audrey Rowe, was an AT&T executive. Solana grew up in a religiously diverse household. Her father was Muslim, and her mother was Christian, which meant she attended both Christian and Muslim schools. This early exposure to various religions, paired with her parents' mutual respect for each other's beliefs, gave Solana a multidimensional foundation for wisdom and her evolving perspectives on love and life. Since an early age, Solana's best friend has been her grandmother, Norma, whom she looked up to immensely and credits with much of her life wisdom. Norma would go on to play a pivotal role in Solana's musical career, helping to ground her artistry in familial emotion and unconditional love. Growing up as one of the few Black or Muslim students in a predominantly white community, Solana often felt isolated and targeted. To avoid verbal abuse and try to blend in, she would sometimes remove her hijab at school, especially in the aftermath of 9/11. That early sense of isolation, of feeling othered and misunderstood, would unknowingly shape the emotional honesty that would come to define her music, where vulnerability became both a shield and a form of connection. As a teenager, Solana attended Columbia High School, the same high school as fellow R&B icon Lauryn Hill. After graduating high school in 2008, she cycled through 3 colleges before settling at Delaware State University, ultimately studying marine biology, although she dropped out in her final semester to pursue music, finding odd jobs to support herself. During this time, Solana was in her self-proclaimed messy hustle girl era, as she drank Malibu rum and smoked weed daily, often oversleeping. She lied about her age to get bartending jobs, and occasionally danced at strip clubs in New Jersey and New York. In 2011, Solana was just beginning to experiment with music. At the time, her boyfriend owned a clothing company that sponsored a Kendrick Lamar show at the CMJ Music Marathon in New York. Backstage, she met a few members of Top Dog Entertainment, a moment that didn't seem life-changing at the time, but would later become pivotal. Solana didn't know it then, but Top Dog Entertainment quietly kept an eye on her, recognizing early on that her spark had the potential to catch fire. In her earliest music days, Solana began casually making music with friends, recording vocals over free beats they found online, and uploading her recordings to SoundCloud. She had no formal training, just curiosity, intuition, and a distinct point of view. These early self-produced tracks were unpolished, but deeply expressive, showcasing a sound that didn't quite fit into any one genre. Solana created the stage name SZA, inspired by the Nation of Islam's Supreme Alphabet and Wu-Tang Clan members RZA and GZA. In the name SZA, the S stands for Savior or Sovereign, while Z and A stand for Zigzag and Allah. With this new name, for the first time, SZA would now have control over who she was becoming and find her own identity. After going back and graduating college, Solana put grad school on hold to try out a career in music. With help from a friend, overwhelming encouragement from her brother, a handful of free internet beats, and some DIY recording tools, she began carving out the earliest version of what would become the sound of SZA. That journey culminated in See.SZA.Run, her self-released debut EP, which dropped on October 29, 2012. To promote it, she released a music video for the song Country earlier that month on October 9th. See.SZA.Run is where SZA's genre-bending instincts first take shape, melding the warmth of neo-soul and alternative R&B with the grit of hip-hop, the haze of cloud rap, and the lo-fi dreaminess of chill wave. At times intimate, at times atmospheric, the EP sounds like something familiar and entirely new all at once. Critics quickly took notice, praising See.SZA.Run's lush production and emotional clarity. Many compared her sound to the early work of artists like Drake, Frank Ocean, Miguel, The Weeknd, and Erykah Badu, but even then, it was clear, SZA wasn't imitating anyone. She was building something entirely her own. On April 10, 2013, just a few months after her debut, SZA returned with her second EP titled S. Musically, S deepened her commitment to genre fluidity. The EP leaned further into alternative R&B, wrapping ambient production around lyrics heavy with longing, grief, and introspection. SZA would later describe the recording process as emotionally intense and deeply personal. Many of the songs were written in the middle of relationship turbulence, some recorded mere moments before they were finalized. To promote the project, SZA released a visual for Ice Moon on November 13, 2013. The video, dreamlike and celestial, matched the ethereal tone of the music. Critics responded with quiet enthusiasm, praising her honesty and sense of atmosphere, while also recognizing the raw potential of an artist still shaping her image and sound. By mid-2013, Top Dog Entertainment had announced that they were actively seeking new talent. With See.SZA.Run and now S under her belt, SZA had already made a compelling case for herself, one that didn't go unnoticed. Later that year, she officially signed to Top Dog Entertainment, becoming the first female artist to join the label's roster. SZA's third EP, titled Z, marked a pivotal moment in her artistic journey. It was her first official release as a signed artist under Top Dog Entertainment. Dropping on April 8, 2014, Z had been primarily recorded during the summer of 2013, during which SZA spent long studio hours collaborating with her new label mate, Isaiah Rashad. By now, SZA had already made genre blurring her trademark. On Z, she pushed that approach even further, fusing elements of alternative R&B, neo-soul, synth-pop, and hip-hop into a rich, otherworldly tapestry. Her voice floated above atmospheric production, offering poetic reflections on romance, detachment, sexuality, and the soft ache of memory. Every song on Z felt like a page torn from a dream journal, intimate and elusive. The EP also marked a turning point in visibility and reach. Z featured collaborations with some of the most respected voices in her circle: Chance the Rapper on the slow-burning Child's Play, and Kendrick Lamar on the haunting standout Babylon. To support the release, SZA unveiled a string of visually arresting music videos for Babylon and Julia. By the way, Julia, for the record, remains one of my all-time favorite SZA tracks. Upon its debut, Z entered the Billboard 200 albums chart at number 39, SZA's first appearance on the chart. Critics once again praised her for her singular vocal delivery, immersive production, and emotional nuance. After the release of her third EP, Z, SZA began to branch out, writing songs for other artists including Nicki Minaj and Beyoncé. But her most high-profile moment during this period came with the release of Consideration, the opening track on Rihanna's album Anti, released January 28, 2016. Although it didn't enter the Billboard Hot 100, the collaboration on Consideration gave SZA vital exposure and helped solidify her presence within the industry. That rising momentum led to growing anticipation for her debut studio album. Originally planned for an early 2016 release, the album faced delay after delay, not due to a lack of material, but from SZA's own inner turmoil. She was caught in the throes of an identity crisis, doubting her voice, her vision, and whether or not her work even mattered. At her core, SZA is a perfectionist, and for perfectionists, the work just never feels done. SZA reportedly recorded hundreds of tracks for the album, making it nearly impossible to commit to a final track list. Meanwhile, logistical setbacks, music video delays, scrapped visuals, shifting rollouts only added to the mounting pressure. Much of that pressure stemmed from being on the same label as Kendrick Lamar, someone whose artistic legacy loomed large within Top Dog Entertainment. SZA often found herself overworking to the point of exhaustion, locking herself in the studio and sleeping there for days. The mental weight of imposter syndrome and self-doubt often left her unable to even listen to her own music, let alone finish it. Tensions behind the scenes didn't help either. By late 2016, creative clashes between SZA and Top Dog Entertainment president Terrence "Punch" Henderson became public. In October, SZA tweeted, "I actually quit. @I am still Punch. Can release my album if he ever feels like it." Then, in early 2017, things took a decisive turn. After years of uncertainty and a growing sense of frustration from the label, Top Dog executives seized SZA's hard drive. They demanded her to hand over everything she had recorded, and from there, producers and executives sifted through nearly 200 songs to assemble a definitive track list. As unorthodox as it was, that intervention proved to be a breakthrough. On June 9th, 2017, after 4 long and tumultuous years, SZA released her debut album, Control. Control felt like a revelation. It was the epitome of emotional honesty at a time when curated perfection had become the cultural norm. In the era of Instagram filters and brandable authenticity, Control offered something raw. It didn't flinch at insecurity, jealousy, or yearning. Instead, it leaned all the way in. It gave a voice to a kind of messy, uncertain womanhood that hadn't been heard at this scale before. SZA wasn't here to be a polished pop product. She was here to be real, and that radical transparency made Control feel like a generational reset. The album opens with Supermodel, a jarring and beautiful confession of abandonment. It captures the bitter sting of being ghosted and cheated on, and the even more painful feeling of still wanting the person who left. It's about questioning your worth in the aftermath of being emotionally discarded. Then comes Love Galore, featuring Travis Scott, the first major collaboration on the album. It's a seductive drive into the toxic relationship you just can't quit. SZA knows it's bad. He won't commit. He's probably cheating, but the craving for connection overrides all logic. It's not about revenge or moving on. It's about admitting that you're still drawn to the person who hurt you. Doves in the Wind, featuring Kendrick Lamar, is a sharp critique of society's obsession with sex and how that obsession devalues emotional intimacy. SZA uses the song to explore how women are often reduced to their physicality, prized for sexual desirability, while being dismissed emotionally. She reminisces about Forrest Gump, not the literal man, but the idea of someone emotionally present, respectful, and not driven by lust. Forrest had a lot going for him, she says, hinting at a type of romantic purity that feels extinct. In a culture of detachment, she asks, "Where is Forrest now when you need him?" Following that, Drew Barrymore is one of the most emotionally intricate songs on Ctrl. Named after the actress, who has become a symbol of resilience after surviving a turbulent childhood, SZA uses Drew as a metaphor for women who feel both too much and not enough. It's a meditation on self-worth, the kind of track that lays bare insecurities about desirability, self-image, and the quiet ache of wondering if you're lovable exactly as you are.
I think maybe what you picked up when you were young, because it's no different now, is this lack of assumption. We are looking for permission to be ourselves. We are looking for someone to tell us it will be okay to be exactly who we are.
In this song, Drew Barrymore becomes less of a person and more of a mirror, reflecting the contradiction of feeling flawed, but still wanting to be loved deeply. Then comes Prom, a more upbeat track that carries a subtle heaviness. Its title is misleading at first glance, evoking images of glitter and youthful rites of passage. But beneath that is a reflection on emotional immaturity and the pressure to grow up too fast. SZA sings about feeling left behind in a world that demands constant progress. Prom becomes a snapshot of arrested development, the kind of anxiety you feel when it seems like everyone around you is moving on and you're still trying to figure yourself out. One of the most culturally resonant tracks on the album is The Weeknd. At its surface, it's a confession. SZA acknowledges that she's the other woman. She's the side chick. But the song is far more layered than a simple side chick anthem. It reflects the blurred lines of modern relationships, where labels are fluid, emotions are guarded, and everything feels temporary. SZA doesn't glorify the dynamic. Instead, she presents it plainly, capturing the emotional detachment and quiet longing that often define situationships in the digital era. In a world with infinite romantic options, The Weeknd is about the cost of settling for partial love. Ctrl's most upbeat track, Go Gina, bursts as a fierce anthem of self-empowerment, a bold middle finger to the haters, and a call to stop dimming your light for anyone. In a world that often demands women to tone down their personality to be quote-unquote cool or desirable, Go Gina flips the script. It's a love letter to being unapologetically too much, bold, loud, and vibrant in an era where fitting in sometimes means blending into blandness. SZA urges listeners to own their full selves, celebrating the power of standing out rather than fading away. My personal favorite song on Ctrl is Garden, also known as Say It Like That. It captures the raw, tangled emotions of insecure love. It's a delicate exploration of needing constant reassurance, that flicker of fear that the person you care about might change or stop being real with you. In today's culture, obsessed with curated images and personal branding, Garden digs into the vulnerability of being truly seen and the terror that the person you love might be hiding their true self. The song reflects a quiet self-betrayal, the willingness to settle for someone who isn't authentic with you, simply to feel loved, even if it's only temporary. SZA turns herself into a metaphorical garden. She's messy, she's needy, she's overgrown with weeds, and needing careful, gentle tending to thrive. One of former President Barack Obama's favorite tracks of 2017, Broken Clocks is a haunting reflection on emotional burnout, the exhaustion that comes from trying to heal past wounds while still pushing forward in the present. How do you keep moving when time keeps slipping, pulling you between the pain of your past and the fleeting moments of now? Amid the relentless grind of hustle culture, Broken Clocks captures the tension between appreciating what's in front of you and being haunted by what brought you here. It's an anthem for the young adult angst that swells in your 20s and 30s, the kind that can both fuel and stall the pursuit of your dreams. The track Anything might just be Ctrl's most vulnerable pick-me anthem. Here, SZA lays bare the ache of craving her partner's attention and getting nothing in return. She asks, almost begging, "Do you even know I'm alive?" She's down for the ride, down for anything, willing to go anywhere, but it feels like her love and effort go unseen. The song captures the exhausting cycle of giving your all to someone who doesn't care, only to be met with silence or indifference. Despite its deceptively upbeat sound, Anything quietly warns that sometimes solitude is better than being with somebody who makes you feel invisible and unvalued. Wavy Interlude featuring James Fauntleroy is short, at just 70 seconds, but crucial to Ctrl's emotional flow. On the surface, it might seem like just another filler track, but it's actually a gentle pause in Ctrl's overall narrative. Right after Wavy comes one of the most intense and heavy songs off of Ctrl, and this mellow interlude acts like a soft exhale, an emotionally numb breath before the storm. In an album full of melancholic, heavy emotions, Wavy Interlude gives listeners a moment to reset, offering a quiet space to breathe before diving deeper. Often seen as the heaviest track on Ctrl, Normal Girl is a raw and intimate exploration of the crushing pressure SZA feels to fit into societal molds. In a culture obsessed with perfection and polished images, Normal Girl mourns women who don't feel like they measure up, the ones who don't see themselves as wifey material. SZA's voice breaks with pain as she wonders why she's too flawed, too emotional, too burdened with baggage to be loved openly. She longs to be somebody her parents would be proud of, somebody to brag about, to love loudly. But instead, she's haunted by the question, why do I have to shrink myself to be loved? Normal Girl isn't just a lament, it's a heartbreaking fracture in SZA's identity, splitting her into two, as she grapples with the weight of being unapologetically herself in a world that demands and expects conformity. Pretty Little Birds, featuring label mate Isaiah Rashad, reimagines the phoenix rising from the ashes with fresh emotional depth. The song is an ode to the broken birds, those with no wings, struggling to learn how to fly again. In a world obsessed with the Instagram perfect facades that erase real feelings in favor of hollow images, Pretty Little Birds pushes back. It resists the pressure to appear invulnerable and reclaims the softness of people carrying deep trauma, those who haven't fully healed, but they're still trying. The song captures the messy, non-linear nature of recovery, reminding us that growth doesn't come from pretending pain never happened. Instead, there's a strange freedom in letting go of perfection and embracing the cracks where healing truly begins. The final track on Ctrl, titled 20-something, closes the album with a fitting reflection on the chaos of youth. It lays bare the tangled fears of the future, fear of missing out, not doing enough, and simply not being enough. The 20s are a storm of high expectations and raw emotions, a time when authenticity comes from admitting that you don't have all of the answers. Growth and self-understanding are born from heartbreak, confusion, and finally, the release of control, especially the control over how others see you. In its gentle poetic softness, 20-something reminds listeners that it's okay to be messy. Mastering your 20s is not about perfection or having it all together. It's about learning to dance with the disorder. The key to success is mastering the mess. In the middle of 2017 of all years, a once-in-a-generation album quietly dropped. At the time, only a small but deeply engaged audience took notice, far smaller than the massive millions of followers that SZA enjoys today. But those few listeners understood at the time just how groundbreaking Ctrl was. SZA's debut isn't just an album. It's a series of raw diary entries filled with modern romantic turmoil, self-sabotage, and emotional honesty that mirrored her chaotic inner world. It resonated especially with young Black women who saw in SZA a beacon of hope and relatability, a voice for those who don't have it all together. She wasn't afraid to explore hookup culture, the messy realities of being the side chick, or the complexities of desire and insecurity. As a dark-skinned black girl growing up in a predominantly white town in New Jersey, SZA struggled with fitting in, internalized beauty standards, and feeling undesirable, insecurities that she candidly unpacks throughout Control. She was outwardly nerdy, quirky, and introspective, but also overtly sexual, jealous, and messy in many ways black women hadn't been allowed to show before. SZA gave permission to live in your dark emotions, to let them linger, and to stop running from your problems. Through Control, SZA alchemized insecurity and indecision into a kind of feminist manifesto, particularly empowering black women to embrace their flaws, uncertainties, and emotional complexities. Her grandmother Norma is woven throughout the album, symbolizing humility, generational wisdom, and unconditional love, serving as both a spiritual anchor and emotional compass. Norma's voice bookends the album, reinforcing themes of vulnerability, growth, and the ongoing struggle to define one's sense of control. Norma would eventually pass away in 2020, memorializing her impact further on Control. Control didn't just succeed commercially, it became a cultural touchstone. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 chart, and as of February 2025, has spent over 400 weeks on the chart, making it the second longest charting R&B album by a woman behind Rihanna's Anti, a record that's fitting since SZA's also featured on Anti as well. Control's best-selling track is Love Galore featuring Travis Scott, which is certified 6 times platinum. The highest charting single, The Weeknd, peaked at number 29 on the Billboard Hot 100 and is certified 5 times platinum. By the end of 2017, Control was widely recognized as one of the year's best albums, ranking in the top 5 for over 20 publications including Rolling Stone and the New York Times. With just her debut album alone, SZA began shaping the voice of a generation, expanding the sound of R&B, and redefining vulnerability as strength. And the public slowly took notice, and it seemed that the industry was ready to follow. At the 60th Grammys in 2018, SZA was the most nominated female artist, with 5 nominations including Best New Artist. Her competition included Julia Michaels, Lil Uzi Vert, Khalid, and the eventual winner, Alessia Cara.
Alessia Cara!
Of those nominees, Julia Michaels and Lil Uzi Vert had the least likely chances based on their other nominations. Khalid was a strong contender, thanks to his feature on the hit 1-800-273-8255, alongside Alessia Cara. But Alessia, the first Canadian to win Best New Artist, had been around since 2015, making her win somewhat controversial. Her victory sparked online backlash, with many arguing that Alessia had an unfair advantage over nominees like SZA, whose breakthrough was more recent. This debate resurfaces regularly due to the Grammys' confusing and inconsistent eligibility rules. Though SZA lost, she graciously congratulated Alessia and emphasized the importance of celebrating peers' success, even in moments of personal disappointment. The bigger shock for me that night wasn't that SZA lost Best New Artist. It was Control not even being nominated for Album of the Year. Bruno Mars swept many major categories that year with 24K Magic, and the song That's What I Like winning Song of the Year. Looking back, it's easy to say that SZA was robbed, but the true robbery was the Grammys overlooking Control for Album of the Year. After the meteoric success of her debut album Control, SZA defied the usual music industry playbook of rushing to release a follow-up album. But this is exactly what makes her so unique. SZA's anxiety is both her driving force and her greatest hurdle. It explains why it was so difficult for her to narrow down a track list for Control, and why her hard drive famously had to be seized to move her album forward. A perfectionist at heart, SZA's standards didn't waver even after amassing millions of followers and selling out shows worldwide. Despite signing with a major label and gaining a massive platform, SZA remained distrustful of the music industry, often feeling undeserving of the spotlight. She stayed creatively anxious and hesitant to fully reveal herself to the world. Given all of this, fans expected it would be several years before she felt ready to release another album. Still, SZA stayed active with high-profile collaborations in the meantime. She teamed up with Kendrick Lamar for All the Stars, featured on the Black Panther soundtrack. The song peaked at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100, went 4 times platinum, and earned 4 Grammy nominations, a Golden Globe nomination, and an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. If only Lady Gaga hadn't written Shallow for A Star Is Born, SZA might have been an Oscar winner. In 2019, she collaborated with DJ Khaled on the song Just Us, which reached number 43 on the Hot 100. Then, in September 2020, SZA dropped the song Hit Different with Ty Dolla $ign. The track peaked at number 29, but was notably excluded from her next album. In December 2020, she released Good Days, a dreamy melodic track that quickly became a fan favorite. It peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and was the first song to be released from her upcoming sophomore album. Undoubtedly, one of her biggest collaborations to date came in 2021 on the song Kiss Me More with Doja Cat. The feel-good lockdown anthem soared to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, went 5 times platinum, surpassed 1 billion streams on Spotify, and won SZA her first Grammy in 2022 for Best Pop Duo/Group Performance. On June 9th, 2022, the album's 5th anniversary, SZA released Control, the Deluxe Edition, featuring 7 previously unreleased tracks recorded between 2014 and 2017. It felt like a love letter to the past and a reminder of the rawness that started it all. Songs like 2 AM and Jody pulled fans right back into the world of Control, filled with late-night spirals, romantic ambiguity, and emotional gut punches. While none of the newly added songs charted individually, the boost in streams and renewed attention reinforced the album's lasting cultural and commercial relevance 5 years after its initial release. The Deluxe Edition not only deepened the emotional resonance of the original album, but it also bridged the gap between Control and what would eventually become SOS. On October 8th, 2022, after months of teasing, SZA finally released the single Shirt. Fans had been eagerly awaiting it ever since it appeared briefly at the end of her Good Days music video in 2021. Multiple fan edits on YouTube racked up millions of views, and the hashtag release shirt trended repeatedly on Twitter and TikTok. Shirt debuted and peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100, marking it as one of SZA's highest charting debuts to date. Just a few months later, on December 3rd, 2022, SZA took the stage as the musical guest on Saturday Night Live, performing both the song Shirt and the song Blind. These performances teased what fans had been waiting for half a decade, her second studio album. And that album, SOS, arrived on December 9th, 2022. And it wasn't just a return, it was a rupture. With 23 tracks, SOS refused to be confined by genre. Instead, it splashed across a canvas of R&B, hip-hop, indie rock, folk, jazz, and pop. What SZA described as a varied palette, with no sonic boundaries, only raw, unfiltered emotions. SOS channeled heartbreak, revenge, jealousy, isolation, and spiritual depletion. Even the album's title, SOS, was deliberate. Named after the maritime signal for help, SOS symbolized SZA's search for clarity, escape, and emotional survival. The album cover, featuring SZA alone on a diving board in the middle of the ocean, was a nod to Princess Diana's famous paparazzi photo off the coast of Portofino in 1997, evoking both endless public scrutiny and private isolation. Critics responded with overwhelming praise for SOS, with many calling it the best album of 2022 and one of the greatest albums of the decade so far. Scoring a 90 on Metacritic, SOS was hailed as an immediate classic, a monumental follow-up to the already groundbreaking success of her debut Control. The expectations were sky high for SZA's second album, and she surpassed every industry metric with ease. SOS debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, SZA's first album to do so, and shattered records for the biggest streaming week ever for an R&B album in US history. It went on to spend 13 non-consecutive weeks at number 1 and remained in the top 10 for over 80 weeks, surpassing Michael Jackson's Thriller as the longest charting album by a black artist on the Billboard 200 chart ever. The album spawned 6 major singles, including SZA's first solo number 1 hit, Kill Bill, which peaked in April of 2023, and the TikTok-fueled track Snooze, the only song to remain on the Billboard Hot 100 for the entirety of 2023. SZA launched the global SOS tour in February 2023, which quickly gained rave reviews for its high-concept stage design, oceanic themes, and deeply emotional live performances. The majority of her tour dates sold out, leading to an expansion of the tour throughout Europe and additional festival appearances. With SOS, SZA would go on to earn 9 Grammy nominations at the 66 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year, but she unfortunately would lose to Taylor Swift's album Midnights, a decision that immediately aged like milk as it was happening in real time. I'm sure the Swifties in the comment section are tying their hair up and will jump me in the parking lot, but I don't care. SZA was robbed and should have swept Album of the Year. Despite having the most nominations of any artist at the 66 Grammys, SZA would ultimately walk away with only 3 Grammys in non-major categories. If you're new here to my channel, my very first video I ever uploaded was about this specific Grammy ceremony and the always infuriating decision-making of the Recording Academy. That video contains a lot of my thoughts on SOS specifically, so I will leave a link in the description if you want to check that out. Nonetheless, as she did in 2018 when she lost Best New Artist to Alessia Cara, SZA publicly congratulated Taylor Swift on her Album of the Year win. On December 20th, 2024, SZA released SOS Lana, a deluxe edition of her record-breaking album featuring 15 new tracks, including the singles Saturn, BMF, and 30 for 30, with guest appearances from Kendrick Lamar and Don Toliver. Lana explored themes of personal growth, closure, and self-improvement, reflecting SZA's evolving songwriting and artistry as she continues to confront her insecurities, navigate toxic relationships, and embrace self-love and accountability. Fittingly, the title Lana is a nod to her childhood nickname, which comes from her full name, Solana Imani Rowe. Critics responded warmly to Lana, praising her ability to mine emotional depth while experimenting with moody, soulful late-night R&B ballads. The Lana Deluxe release reignited SOS, pushing it back to #1 on the Billboard 200 chart nearly 2 years after its original debut, setting a record for the longest gap between weeks at #1 in Billboard chart history. Billboard even noted that if Lana had been released as a standalone separate album, it still would have debuted at #1. The lead single Saturn peaked at #6 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and would go on to win SZA the Grammy for Best R&B Song in 2025. SZA also made her acting debut in January 2025 in the Issa Rae produced film One of Them Days, co-starring alongside Keke Palmer. The film scored a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, with both critics and audiences praising SZA's effortless screen presence, signaling a promising new potential acting career. In February 2025, SZA joined Kendrick Lamar on stage at the Super Bowl halftime show in New Orleans' Caesars Superdome. Decked out in all red as the two performed several of their hits including Luther and All the Stars. With over 133 million viewers, it became the most watched Super Bowl halftime show of all time. As a result of the show, their duet Luther skyrocketed to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, where it has remained for over 12 consecutive weeks, becoming SZA's longest charting #1 song to date. In March of 2025, SZA announced her new lip product line, Not Beauty, which would be sold exclusively during her grand national tour with Kendrick Lamar following the global success of their Super Bowl moment. And in April of 2025, in the kind of full circle moment only SZA could manifest, she was officially named an honorary Muppet during a special episode of Sesame Street filmed for the show's 55th season. When looking back, it's hard to fully capture the impact of Ctrl. It's more than just an album, it's a living, breathing piece of art, something that asks to be understood with nuance, context, and care. Each track stands alone, worthy of its own praise, yet together they form something that redefined emotional honesty at a time when Instagram filters and the fake it till you make it attitude were the cultural norm, and in some ways, still are. Ctrl doesn't just reflect the emotional toll that others can have on us, it exposes it. It shows that vulnerability isn't weakness. In a world that feels increasingly curated and artificial, Ctrl offered something rare, something raw. It was a moment of truth in the middle of the CGI. As I thought about how to wrap up this video and really honor the legacy of Ctrl, I wrestled with how to do it without sounding too over the top or painfully sentimental. Normally I would go for a snappy, tongue-in-cheek ending, but this time I want to do something different. We all know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes the right words, framed in the right moment, can be just as powerful. So in honor of SZA's artistry and originality, I'm closing this video with an original poem that I've written, appropriately titled, Dear SZA, Thank You for Ctrl. I hope you enjoy it. You cracked your heart open and gave us control. Made space for the messy, for not feeling whole. You sang your insecurities and wrote them in gold, a blueprint for vulnerability, for breaking the mold. In the era of filters, you kept it bare, anxious and aching, still choosing to care. In the face of perfection, you let it slip. You showed us the beauty in losing your grip. From Gogina to Prom to 2 AM on Deluxe, Ctrl is the go-to album when life really sucks. From one stoner to another, this album never ages. Trust me, I've listened in different life stages. If Ctrl was a woman, she would forever be revered as a voice for those who have wanted to disappear. Ctrl was a reset for the cultural feed. It said, sometimes I'm too much, and that's what we need. Ctrl taught us to linger in our pain a little longer, to honor those dark feelings that made us grow stronger. You made crying cool, made sad girls feel tough, like maybe their softness was more than enough. Miss 20-something, you gave it your best. Top Dog took your hard drive because you needed to rest. Your greatest fear was not being a normal girl. But SZA, being you is what changed the whole world. No matter where you are, I think everyone would say, Ctrl gave us everything and still continues to this day.